we are going to talk about today will be on how we can make our houses more resilient to climate change. And we have very good speakers this afternoon joining us. By the way, my name is Arnel Capilla. I'm the country director for Philippines and Indonesia. And we're talking about Philippines, the example, the experience of Philippines, particularly because Philippines is one of the most high-risk countries, very much susceptible to typhoons and seismic hazards. 40% of the world will be living in substandard housing in the next few until 2030. And in the Philippines alone, this is projected to be about 117 million people by 2030. And that's a lot of people living in substandard housing. So what are we doing about this? So Build Change is the global system change leader in disaster resilient housing. We simultaneously overcome the three major barriers to housing, such as people, money, and technology. We are very thankful to Gobeshona for organizing this. So we will talk about the experience and the journey of the Philippines with how to scale up and ensure that a good number of the population have climate resilient housing. Joining us this afternoon are very experienced speakers. They are working on the ground, really doing things to move the advocacy forward. So let me introduce to you our first speaker. Our first speaker is my colleague. She's the manager for housing finance. She is an experienced development and corporate financial inclusion specialist with very strong technical knowledge, gained through more than 18 years of professional engagement dealing with highly diversified credit markets to include banks, microfinance institutions, wholesale fund providers, government, regulatory agencies, and so much more. Until now, she is dedicated to creating access to financial services for low-income and vulnerable communities. At Build Change, Gurley continues her focus on improving access to capital and oversees the scaling of housing finance loans in partnership with financial service providers. Join me in welcoming our first speaker, Gurley Lopez, our manager for housing finance.
Hello, good afternoon.
Thanks, Gurley. Our other speaker, very important because that's where the funding comes from. And this is a very important component of our theory of change: people, money, and technology. So she's the part of the money in helping us ensure the advocacy is scaled up. We have the executive director of Alalay sa Kaunlaran Microfinance. Better for all those listening, it's ASCII. So for us to make it shorter, ASCII is a microfinance institution. Our speaker has 23 years of experience in microfinance in various capacities, including branch management, internal audit, policy development, training delivery for microfinance practitioners and clients. She concurrently serves as the president of Microfinance Information Data Sharing System, which is called MIDAS, and the treasurer of the Board of Microfinance Council of the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, join me as we welcome the executive director of ASCII, Ms. Jane Manokdok. Jane, do you want to say hello to everyone first?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Gurley and Jane. We will begin. And for all our participants, please, if you have questions, just put them in the chat box and I will read them so that you don't lose or forget what you're going to ask, because we have a very interesting conversation this afternoon. Okay, let's begin. Philippines, we have about 20 typhoons a year. We have earthquakes. And in 2020 alone, Gurley, over 5 million Filipinos were affected, and about 425,000 houses were negatively impacted by typhoons and earthquakes. We were talking about a good number of Filipinos who are going to be affected because of this climate change. In terms of housing gaps, what do you think will be the solution for that? Girly, over to you.
Thank you, Arnel. The Philippines housing gap right now is estimated at about 6.57 million units. So you imagine how vast the gap is. But actually, the number of substandard
Girly, we
housing
lost your
in the
audio.
Philippines,
Okay, go ahead.
uh, this word, Arnel? Hello? Does this work, Arnel?
Go ahead. We can hear you now.
Okay. So the housing gap is now at 6.57 million, but the number of substandard housing units far exceeds that number. Most of the substandard housing in the Philippines serves as homes for low-income household. They typically are those that do not have the land ownership documents. They have no mortgage collateral. They are those who are engaged in small businesses or livelihood, and they would have limited financial capacity to improve their homes. So we can say that the low-income Filipino households are most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. When we say those effects, we mean the heat during summer, which is becoming extreme nowadays, and of course the devastating typhoons. Because of this vulnerability, we at Build Change in the Philippines is really committed to improve the quality of housing for these low-income families. And since that is our target, we started to work with microfinance institutions who have the experience and expertise in providing financial services specifically for this market. We are now working with partner microfinance institutions or MFIs to develop and implement an affordable, scalable, and a sustainable financing product with technical services addressing their demand for resilient housing. And one of our partner MFIs is with us now, Arnel, led by Jane, ASCII MFI.
Thank you very much, Girly, and thank you for giving us a picture of the housing gap in the Philippines and what Build Change intends to do by partnering with a microfinance institution. Now, I'll now go and have a conversation with Jane. Jane, what is the motivation of a microfinance institution to go into resilient housing? So, what's the motivation of ASCII, and why resilient housing? Jane, over to you.
Yeah, thank you and good afternoon again. Quickly, just please allow me to introduce a little bit of ASCII so that we can see the context on how we are motivated to join this program with Build Change. So ASCII is a non-stock nonprofit organization. We began lending in Nueva Ecija, one of the provinces of the Philippines, in 1987. So we're already 35 years in service, Arnel and everyone. Our coverage reached to right now 12 provinces in the northern and central portion of the Philippines with more than 100,000 clients. And apart from microfinance, we are now having 9 business units that caters to primary and secondary education, social protection, livelihood opportunities for our clients and their communities. And then we also introduce alternative energy solutions for the community. We also have community development, agriculture value chain program, and capacity building. So now our motivation for partnering with Build Change and for having this resilient housing is that it roots from our desire to protect our clients from the impacts of the typhoons. As you have said, we are encountering about 20 typhoons in a year. So this is how we experience typhoon in the Philippines. Annually, the impact of the disaster to our operations is reaching about 100 to 400 million pesos. So that's in total portfolio of ASCII. So that's around 2 million to 8 million US dollar, wherein 20% of the affected portfolio consists of the housing loan portfolio that we are managing or assisting. So having experienced those disasters affecting our operational sustainability, we began looking for ways on how we can both resolve our institutional losses, and how, of course, we can help our clients save their homes, and also at the same time, the businesses attached to their homes. Because our clients in microfinance, they have their store attached to their residences. So basically, when typhoon hits, the homes were destroyed and the livelihoods were also destroyed. Thus, we became interested in this disaster resilient housing program introduced by Bill Change in 2018.
Jane, thank you very much for that. 100,000 clients, that's a lot of clients that you cater to, and a good portfolio of 2 to 8 million US dollars for ASCII products. But Jane, can I continue in asking you, why are you targeting the low income households? Why the low income households, and how do you ensure that there is what do you call that, their capacity to pay is there? If you're investing, you want to get your return on investment. So why are you targeting the low income households for this?
Okay. ASCII is a social development organization. Our mission is really to help the poor in the areas of operation. So, in fact, we began our housing program in 2015. What we are doing is the traditional way of lending to our clients, where we lend cash, and they do their own way of constructing their homes and repairing their homes. So the targeting of our clients roots from our inspiration or our motivation and dream to help these clients move out of poverty, because ASCII is also using the poverty indicators. We call it the PPI, and from that PPI tool, we are choosing clients that has housing walls made of light materials. So we select clients that have those kinds of house structure. So it is basically to make our mission work in poverty alleviation. Because every time the typhoon hits, clients will be coming to us. They will be begging, "Can you help me? Can you help us? Can you bring us some construction materials to just put roofs on our wall and the likes?" So this is our intention for helping them. That's why that's the type of clients that we are serving.
Very well. That's a very noble cause that your ASCII is undertaking. Thanks, Jane. Girly, how is Bill Change uh, helping ASCII with this very noble, worthy cause? How are you partnering with them?
Yes. Right now, the program in partnership with the microfinance institution to include ASCII, Build Change Philippines is providing them the services, technical services for them to develop an appropriate product that would match the preference and
Girly, we lost you.
cater to the needs of their clients, specifically focusing on. Am I back, Arnel?
Yes, you are. Maybe you want to switch off
Yes.
your video because
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
How about this one, Arnel?
Yes, loud and
Okay.
clear.
Thank you. Apologies for the weak internet connection. So, nonetheless, our project with the microfinance institutions to include ASCII is that Build Change have provided them some tools, and we have improved the processes in order to incorporate our technical resources. This program has three components, one of which is the awareness campaign, wherein we have developed some modules tailored fit to the target population in the local dialects so that they could understand more and be aware of the hazards and how a resilient home would benefit them. The second one is helping out ASCII and the other MFIs to produce or develop an appropriate product, the correct loan amount, the correct loan term that would match the preference and the affordability of the target population. Also, we are on the third component, we have provided them some engineering resources that we have developed, some tools that will help the local builders look at the existing structures and have an assessment of that. We have also given our partner MFIs a calculation tool that will enable them to have the scope of work needed and the basic bill of quantities that their clients would be needing. And more importantly, we have developed some training modules for the staff, the builders, and the homeowners. So far, those are the things that we're currently doing for our partner microfinance institutions, Arnel.
Very good. Thanks. Thank you very much, Girly. Girly, can I follow up with a question? Um, based on our study, there are about 8.5 million low-income families in the Philippines needing assistance that can be supported by microfinance institutions. ASCII, based on what Jane mentioned earlier, they're just catering to about 100,000 clients. So there's still a huge number of those that would require MFI support. So what is the opportunity for growth and expansion here? What is the plan of Build Change and other MFIs to make sure that we can cover a sizable percentage of this 8.5 millions requiring assistance? Gertie?
The demand is so huge, Arnel, ano? Everyone in the low income household mostly are living in substandard housing, and it had been manifested in a lot of surveys that we did in the microfinance industry that the clients are really in need for a more resilient house, but affordability and other technical services associated with the financing is needed. That is why Build Change is really committed to help microfinance institutions and other financial institutions within the country to develop an appropriate product for this. We also are open to partnering with other institutions similar to ASCII who would want to continue our mission of saving lives so that when the next disaster comes, they are on a more resilient home to stay. Further, we are also advocating for some policy, enabling policies, Arnel, that includes our work with the government and with other housing shelter authorities so that we could have a more enabling policies within the country that advocates and highlights the need not only of houses but of resilient homes for Filipinos, especially the most vulnerable, those that are on the low income families, Arnel.
Thanks very much, Gertie. So it's more about, we have to look at the policies, how we are able to influence and advocate for more resilience housing in the Philippines. And also we're looking at more funding for the MFI so that they can continue to grow their business and at the same time expand and be able to cater to more low income families needing assistance in the housing sector. Jane, what are the plans? Since we're talking about the future now, what are the plans for ASCII to be able to serve more clients who might need assistance in terms of having resilient houses? What's ASCII's plan, Jane?
Okay. First, we would like to have our operations more sustainable in order for us to, allot funds for the clients that need resilient housing. That's our internally generated funding, of course. But also, we would like to partner with similar or like-minded institutions, just like Build Change and also other government agencies who's into housing development and also banks like Land Bank, who's funding us for these type of projects also. So we continue to do networking and finding innovations and solutions for our clients. But basically, we have to strengthen our own operations so that we can help our clients better in the future.
Excellent. That's something that we are looking forward to, Jane. Um, can I remind our participants, if you have questions, this is the time that you can raise them. You may speak or you may put them in the chat box. So, um, for any questions for Jane or Girly, please raise your hand or put it in a chat box. Okay, it seems that you explained things quite clearly, so our participants don't have any questions. But before we wrap up, can I hear some parting words from Girly and Jane in terms of what do you need and how do you see we can expand and serve more to save lives and properties in the future? Let's begin with Jane and close with Girly. Jane, your parting shots. What do you need?
I would like to call, to, how do I say that? I want to voice out this concern from microfinance practitioner like us for the government and for the funding agencies and the lenders that from the ready-made housing program that they are offering, the what we call the pabahay program of the government. I think the participatory approach that was introduced by Bill Change makes a lot of sense and also engage our clients, to have their dream house come true or come to reality so that in the event of disaster they will be more safe. And the value chain, livelihood value chain is still attached to the housing program because most of the clients that were awarded with the housing program of the government is actually living out for some time because they would look out for livelihoods in their previous homes, especially if they are relocated. So I think the participatory approach is very important. And I'm encouraging also Bill Chains and other partners who are joining the program, if we can cascade the tool that we are using right now, because instead of going back to the traditional way of lending to the housing needs of our clients, wherein we give them the cash and then they will do their own thing, and then eventually they will misuse the funds and they will be entangled with the cycle of poverty because the house that has been constructed and funded when typhoon comes will be damaged again, and then they will go back to borrowing again and again. So these are my thoughts on this on the program that we are having right now. And I think stakeholders who are listening right now or who has the intention of helping the vulnerable poor to pour out their resources together with us so that our resources and our efforts will complement each other. Thank you, Arnel.
Excellent, excellent, Jane. I mean, you hit the nail on the head when you said it's about participatory approach. Before I let you go, Jane, I have one quick question for you. If we want to replicate this in other countries, for example, in the Southeast Asia region, in Indonesia and other areas, if we approach a microfinance institution, what do we need to do to convince them that this is a doable, achievable solution, but at the same time, it's an opportunity to be able to, an opportunity that can be explored. So what do we have to do to convince them?
Yeah, as a microfinance institution or practitioner, I think we need to look into the mission of that institution. If it has the heart for the poor and to put resources into the housing needs, because microfinance is affected by disasters, and when we say affected, the whole portfolio is affected, and the priority in which the clients would like to rebuild their welfare or their lives lies on the rebuilding of the houses. So that's a basic need, and we need to look into that, and we need to cater to that.
Very good. So what we need to do is look at the mission of the MFI and see if it aligns with what we're trying to do. So that's one way of being able to open that opportunity with MFIs. Very good.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Jane. And that's a very useful approach that we will use in the future to partner more with MFIs. Thank you. Girly, it's your turn now.
Yes, Arnel? Yes. The issue on substandard housing in the Philippines could not be addressed simply in a one-shot deal. We need an interdependence of addressing our issues on people, money, and technology. We need to take this holistic and systemic approach. We at Build Change right now is having this innovative approach, partnering with partner microfinance institutions to provide that avenue so that the low income household, those who need it the most vulnerable, would have an opportunity for them to improve their existing housing. We are currently pilot testing this in the Philippines, but we also look forward to expanding the program in other countries here in Asia and the Pacific. We want to collaborate more with financial institutions as well as other stakeholders because this is very important as we pave the way to have an enabling environment policy-wise, people who wants their houses to be resilient, having the money readily available through our partner financial institutions, and Build Change with the other professionals, engineering professionals, providing the technology needed. We should be doing this. We should be united in doing this so that those who need it the most would have access to resilient housing. We would be saving lives and making disaster resilient houses available to all, especially to the vulnerable communities. Thank you, Arnel. Thank you, everyone.
Very good. On that high note about a very comprehensive approach, whole of society approach, that is an approach that we will use in to advocate for more resilient housing so that Filipinos and other countries, other nationalities vulnerable to the effects of climate change can be more resilient, can have more resilient houses, can be safer when those disasters, natural hazards threaten most of them. On that note, again, thank you very much to all our participants for joining us this afternoon. And we'd also like to specifically thank our speakers, Jane Manukdok and Gerly Lopez, for sharing their experience, for sharing their knowledge about the journey of the Philippines in terms of climate resilience through housing that can be scalable at the global level. Thank you very much again, and thank you for joining us.